There's one number that tells you the exact moment the market starts out earning your paycheck. For someone putting $300 a month into the market, that number is £5 from $400. Not a vibe. A number you can work out on a napkin. And here's the cruel part. Most savers cross that line around year 10. The same year most of them quit. They walk away the exact year the math flips in their favor. I know how that sounds. Let me earn it. Meet Lisa. She's 28, works in operations, takes home about $58,000 a year. After rent, groceries, her car, her phone, she's got about $400 of flex left each month. She decides to put $300 of it into a broad market index fund and live on the rest. No timing, no stock picking. Same $300, same fund, every month. Now, let's lock the variables so the math has nowhere to hide. Same job, same salary, same $300 a month, same broad market index, same 7% real return. And that word real matters, so let's be precise about it. The S&P 500 has historically returned about 10% a year before inflation, but inflation quietly eats roughly 3% of your money's buying power every single year. Strip that out, and what's left? The growth that actually buys you more house, more groceries, more life is about 7%. That's the number we're using all the way through, not the flashy headline 10, the honest after inflation 7, same 30-year window. And with everything else nailed down, only one thing is allowed to change from one year to the next. The balance in the account, hold on to that. It is the whole video. When people picture saving, they picture a straight line. $300 a month is $3,600 a year. 10 years is $36,000. 20 years is $72,000. 30 years is $108,000. Clean, predictable. That's the contribution line, the money you personally put in, adding up one steady rung at a time. And here's why that picture is so sticky and so wrong. Your brain is built to think in straight lines. You put in 300, you expect 300 worth of progress, and you imagine a ramp climbing at a steady angle forever. But compounding doesn't move in a straight line. It moves in a curve, one that starts almost flat and then bends upward faster and faster. And for the first several years, that curve hugs the straight line so closely your eye can't tell them apart. They look identical. That's the trap. By the time the curve visibly tears away from the line, most people have already decided nothing is happening and walked off. So, watch Lisa's first 10 years, because this is where the damage gets done. End of year 1, she's put in $3,600. The market handed her back $118. That's it. 108 times for 12 straight months of discipline. It feels broken. Year 3, her whole year market gain is around $700. Call it $60 a month. Completely invisible next to the $300 she's shoveling in herself. Year 5, she's contributed $18,000. Her balance is about $2,500, and her gain for the year is around $1,300. $100 a month. She's beating inflation, which is the entire point, but the number is still small enough to feel like nothing. Year 10, she's put in $36,000 of her own paychecks. Her balance is about $52,000. The market added roughly $16,000 across an entire decade, and her market gain in year 10 alone, about $3,400, is still a hair under the $3,600 she contributed that year herself. So Lisa sits at her kitchen table and does the honest math. 10 years, $36,000 of my own money, in $16,000 to show for it. And if she'd spent that decade chasing hot stocks instead, half her friends would be telling her she played it too safe. This is the exact moment most people quit, and nobody ever tells them what they're standing right on top of. Here's the mechanism underneath the flat decade. The thing almost nobody explains because it isn't bad luck and it isn't a bad market. Compound growth doesn't run on what you put in. It runs on what's already sitting there. 7% of a small balance is a small number of dollars. 7% of 100,000 is 700. 7% of 5,000 is 3,500. 0.7% of 25,000 is 17,500. Same percentage, wildly different dollars. And the only thing separating them is the size of the pile it's working on. So in year one, the percentage has almost nothing to grip, and it shows. But every year, the balance is a little bigger. So the gain is a little bigger, and that bigger gain gets folded back into the balance, which makes next year's gain bigger. Still, the growth compounds, but so does the speed of the growth. Look at Lisa's yearly gain indicator part. In year 20, the market hands her about $110,000. In year 30, about $24,000. That's $14,000 more per year from the exact same 7%. Just 10 years further along, the gain isn't only getting bigger, it's accelerating. So let's find the exact line where that flip happens. Here's the whole thing on a napkin. The question is simple. How big does the balance have to get before the market's gain in a single year matches everything you put in that year yourself? Your contribution is $3,600 a year. The market pays 7%. So set theme call. Balance times 7% equals 3,600. Divide both sides by 7% and the balance falls right out. 3,600, 7% equals 5,129. That's the line. Below it, your paycheck is doing more work than the market. Above it, the market is doing more work than you ever could. And it isn't a guess or a vibe. It's one division. Your contribution divided by your return. Change either number and the line moves, which is exactly why yours won't be the same as Lisa's. Now, here's the part that should genuinely bother you. Remember which year Lisa crosses 51,000? Year 10. The exact year she was sitting at that kitchen table, calculator out, thinking about quitting. She was standing directly on the line, the very moment she most wanted to walk away from it. The people who quit at year 10 aren't quitting because the strategy failed. They're quitting one step short of the payoff because the payoff is designed to arrive right after the part. That tests you. That one number gives you a map with 3 rungs on it, and every rung is the same equation, just at a different size. Rung 1 is the starter floor. Any balance below the line below 5,400. Here your own paycheck outworks the market. It feels like saving because it basically is saving. The compounding part is barely visible. This is where nearly every account sits for the entire first decade. Rung 2 is the crossover itself, $1,500 and $1,400. For the first time, the market's yearly gain equals your contribution. The account is finally pulling its own weight. Rung 3 is catch fire. Take the same equation and ask where the market's gain is 5 times your contribution. That's 5 times the line, about $257,000. At that balance, 7% alone hands you $18,000 a year, 5 times the $3,600 you put in. Your own contribution has become a rounding error. The account is doing the work, and you're mostly just watching. Same formula. 3 rungs. And most people never learn the names, so they never know which rung they're standing on or how far the next tone is. Now here's something compounding. Does that feel almost unfair? And it changes how you should think about the word start. Not every dollar Lisa invests is worth the same, not even close. A dollar she puts in during year Dimborn has 30 full years to grow. At 7% it turns into about $8 by the finish line. A dollar she puts in during the final month has no time at all. It's still worth about $1 when she stops. Same dollar, same fund, same person. One works for 3 decades, the other barely clocks in. Now scale that up. And this is the number I want you to sit with. Take the $18,000 Lisa contributes across her first 5 years. By year 30, that early money has quietly grown into about $123,000. Now take everything she contributes across her last 15 years. That's $54,000, 3 times as much money going in. By year 30, it's worth about $95,000. Read that again. The $18,000 she invested yearly beats the $54,000 she invested late. Her first 5 years of saving outran her final 15 years with 1/3 of the money. It isn't mostly about how much you put in. It's about how long each dollar gets to work. The contributions you make in your 20s and early 30s are doing the heavy lifting for the entire rest of your life. Everything you add later helps, but it's showing up to a race that's already nearly run. So which rung do real households actually reach? For that, We go to the Federal Reserve Survey of Consumer Finances, the most comprehensive wealth study in the country. Among households that hold our retirement account at all, the median balance under 35 is about $18,000. Deep in the starter floor, 35 to 44, about 45,000, 45 to 54, about 115,000, and 55 to 64. Peak saving age, the last stop before retirement, about 85,000. Sit with that 35 to 44 number, $45,000. That's below the crossover line. The typical household in that bracket hasn't even reached the point where the market out earns them yet, and they've got the Fee West working years left to get there. And there's a harder truth hiding behind all those medians. They only count households that own a retirement account in the first place. Nearly half of American households don't. For them, there's no line to cross because there's no account doing any work at all. So this isn't a willpower story. Most people are putting real money into real accounts, and the curve quits on them before they ever quit on it. So go back to Lisa at year 10, standing on the line, and let the story split cleanly in two. In one version, she quits, not dramatically. She just quietly stops adding the 300. Life gets busy. A car breaks. The contribution feels pointless after a decade of nothing. She leaves what's already there invested and moves on. In the other version, she does nothing special at all. She just keeps going. Same fund, same 300, no heroics, no extra discipline. 20 years later, Lisa, who stopped contributing, has about $21,000. And honestly, that's not bad because the $52,000 she'd already built kept compounding on its own. But Lisa, who simply kept going, has about $366,000. The gap between quietly stopping and quietly continuing is $115,600. She didn't work harder for it. She didn't earn more or pick better. She just didn't step off the line the same year she finally reached it. And the second decade is where the very thing she almost quit on turns and starts paying her. Year 15, her balance clears $95,000, and the market's yearly gain, knocked back about $6,300, beats her own contribution now permanently. From here on, the market is the bigger contributor to her account every single year, and it never gives that lead back. Year 20, balance about $156,000, market gain about $110,400 a year, nearly 3 times what she puts in. Year 25, balance about $243,000, 1 year short of catch fire. She roughly tripled her money across that decade, not because the market got better. It didn't. It's the same 7% it always was. But because the balance finally got big enough for that percentage to matter. Same rate, same fund, same 300 a month, bigger pile. That's the entire trick. And if early dollars do the most work, then here is the most expensive decision most people never realize they're making. Not quitting, waiting. Say Lisa doesn't quit at all. She just starts 1 year later. 28 becomes 29. Everything else is identical. Same 300 a month, same 7%, same finish line. That single year of delay cost her about $28,000 at the end. Sit with the arithmetic on that. The year she skipped was $3,600 of contributions. Skipping it cost her $28,000, almost 8 times the money, because the dollars she didn't invest that first year were the very dollars that would have had the longest runway to grow. That's the whole lesson in one line. The most expensive year of your investing life isn't the year the market crashes. It's the year you sat out and never started. Now, the part most channels skip, there are real situations where this story falls apart, and we owe you those straight. First, if you can't actually stay invested, the backloaded math doesn't help. You need the money at year 12 for a down payment. You walk out around $67,000, the floor of the climb, not the top of it. Compounding rewards calendar time and punishes early exits. And there's no way around that fees. A 1% expense ratio does not sound like much. Over 30 years, it quietly removes about $65,000 from Lisa's ending balance, roughly 17% of the entire thing, gone to a number on a statement she probably never reads. The line still exists, it just slides further up the curve and you reach it years later, allow a return. If real returns come in at 85% instead of 7, the crossover line arises to about 72,000 and Lisa's 30-year ending balance drops from around 366,000 to about 25,000. Same shape, gentler slope. Vertical arrives later, sometimes after the working years have already run out and starting late. Say Lisa waits until 43, then tries to catch up by doubling to $600 a month. 15 years later, she has about 19,000 and she never reaches catch fire inside her working life. And it's harsher than it looks. To actually match the version of herself who started at 28 with just $300 a month, a 43-year-old would have to invest almost $600 a month for 22 straight years, nearly double the monthly for far longer. And she'd still hand over about $155,000 of her own money to reach a number the early starter hit with 1 to 8,000. That's the tax on waiting. It gets paid in extra dollars because it can't be paid in the one thing she actually needed, which was time. One last honest note. The market does not hand you a clean 7% every year. That's an average. Some years it gives you 20%, some years it takes 15 away. The order those good and bad years arrive in matters more than most people think, and that's a whole video of its own. But average it out across a few decades in a broad index, and the crossover is still where the tide turns. The line is real. The ride to it just isn't smooth. But for the saver who starts early and stays on the line, here is where it all lands. By year 30, Lisa has contributed $108,000 of her own paychecks. Her balance is about $366,000 and her market gain in year 30 alone is about $204,500. Say that out loud. In a single year, the market handed her almost 7 times what she put in that year and more than her entire first decade of market gains combined. Year 1, the market added $118. Year 30, it added $204,500. That's more than 200 times the dollar growth from the same 7%, the same fund, the same $300 a month. The only thing that changed was the size of the balance the percentage was working on. That is what people mean when they say compounding catches fire. It's not a metaphor. It's just what 7% does to a large balance instead of a tiny one. And it doesn't stop at year 30. Once an account clears the catch fire rung, it starts doubling roughly every decade on the strength of the market alone, with or without your $300 a month. That's the far side of the curve almost nobody sees in their own account because they stepped off it 20 years earlier, standing on the line, convinced nothing was happening. So here's the trap stated as plainly as it can be. It isn't saving too little. It isn't picking the wrong fund. The trap is reading your first 10 years as evidence and quitting before the curve does the part you actually signed up for. Compounding doesn't lie to you. It just refuses to show you in year 5 what year 25 is going to look like. The people who win at this are not smarter than the people who quit. They aren't more disciplined, and they didn't earn more. They just stayed on the line long enough for the percentage to find some real dollars to work on. So, here's the only question that matters tonight. Where is your line? Not Lisa's yours. Your crossover depends on just 2 numbers. What you put in and what you expect to earn. We built the exact tool that runs it for you. Put in your contribution and your return, and it tells you your crossover balance, which rung you're standing on right now, and roughly the year you'll cross it. It's in the vault alongside the rest of the tools we build for these breakdowns. The link's below, and the vault's open to members. And if you're wondering what happens when you double the contribution or start at 40 instead of 28, or run the whole thing inside a Roth where taxes come off the table, the shape stays the same, but the line moves and catch fire lands somewhere new. We'll run those exact numbers next. If this showed you a piece of the math you'd been missing, subscribe and turn notifications on. We're in the numbers on the decisions that actually shape the next 20 years of your